Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to another deep dive. We love digging into really rich material, pulling out those key insights just for you. Today, we're plunging into some pretty profound stuff, sources focusing right on Philippians chapter 3. We're aiming to uncover those timeless truths from the Apostle Paul's own journey,
Okay.
and see how his experiences, his life in Christ, can really shape how we understand faith and, well, what really matters.
Absolutely. And what's so foundational about Philippians 3 is how Paul uses his own story, his personal narrative, to explain this radical change that faith in Christ brings.
Right.
He doesn't just give theory, he lays it all out, his past, his achievements, his background, all of it, just to highlight this massive shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It's a powerful text, and I think incredibly relevant for anyone sort of grappling with what really has value today, especially when the world's shouting different answers at us.
It certainly is. And Paul, well, he kicks off Philippians 3.13 pretty directly, doesn't he? Reassuring the Philippians, saying, in conclusion, my brothers, rejoice in union with the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
It is no trouble for me to repeat what I have written you before, and for you it will be a safeguard. It's almost like he's saying, look, I know I've said some of this before, but listen up. This is important. It's for your protection.
Exactly. It's like, pay attention, this matters. And then almost in the next breath, he gives this really strong warning.
Yeah, it's quite jarring.
It is. He says, beware of the dogs, those evildoers, the mutilated. And then immediately contrasts, for it is we who are the circumcised, we who worship by the Spirit of God and make our boast in the Messiah, Yeshua. We do not put confidence in human qualifications.
That language, dogs, evildoers,
Mm-hmm.
wow. And it feels pretty intense.
It is intense, and it sort of echoes warnings from the prophets, like Isaiah, warnings against teachers who twist the truth, who maybe tell people what they want to hear instead of God's sometimes challenging word.
So these dogs he was warning about, who exactly were they? It seems pretty clear the issue was that old conflict. Law versus grace.
That's the heart of it.
Yeah.
These were false teachers trying to add things onto salvation, rules, maybe traditions, rituals, basically saying faith in Christ wasn't quite enough, you needed more.
And it's fascinating, maybe a bit worrying, how that same idea keeps popping up even today, sometimes in really subtle ways.
Oh, absolutely. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Where do we see that today? That tendency to add our own human requirements onto God's grace.
Could be in denominations,
Yeah.
maybe, where following certain traditions becomes like a badge of real faith.
Exactly. Or even just personally feeling like you have to do more, achieve more to sort of earn God's approval. It's this temptation to control things through rules, which kind of undermines the freedom we actually have in Christ. Paul's warning, it's still spot on.
Which leads us right into Paul's own list of human qualifications. Philippians 3.46. I mean, if anyone could boast based on human standards, it was him.
Oh, without a doubt.
He basically says, you think your background gives you points? Let me tell you about my background. He lists, 7 specific things that in his old life would have been seen as like the ultimate reasons for confidence.
And the details are just staggering when you understand the cultural weight. First, he says, Brit Milah on the 8th day. Perfect adherence to the law right from the start, not a later convert.
Right.
Second, a full-blooded Jew, pure lineage, gave him undeniable authenticity, unlike some who might have been later converts to Judaism.
Okay.
Third, from the tribe of Benjamin, that was a highly respected tribe, linked to Israel's first king, Saul, a position of honor.
And he keeps going. Fourth, a Hebrew speaker with Hebrew-speaking parents. This wasn't just language, was it? It meant connection to the kind of religious elite, the original text.
Precisely. Deep roots. Fifth, in regard to the Torah, a Parush, a Pharisee. These guys were the meticulous ones, the scholars, the experts, trying to live out every single detail of the law.
The best of the best by that standard.
You could say that. And then number 6, this one's really striking given his conversion story. In regard to zeal, a persecutor of the Messianic community.
Yeah, that's hard to forget.
He wasn't just disagreeing, he was actively, violently going after believers, even got papers to go to Damascus and arrest them, shows incredible, almost fanatical commitment to his old beliefs.
Wow.
And finally, 7th, in regard to the righteousness demanded by legalism, blameless. He did it all the sacrifices, the rules. By any measure of that time, religious or worldly, Paul's resume was, well, flawless.
Just an incredible list, top of the heap. But then Then comes this massive shift, Philippians 3.79. It's almost like spiritual whiplash.
It really is.
He says, but the things that used to be advantages for me, I have, because of the Messiah, come to consider a disadvantage.
Disadvantage.
And he doubles down. Not only that, but I consider everything a disadvantage in comparison with the supreme value of knowing the Messiah Yeshua as my Lord.
Everything.
It was because of him that I gave up everything and regarded all as garbage.
Garbage. That's a strong word. Very strong. Some translations use refuse or even stronger terms, basically trash, in order to gain the Messiah and be found in union with him. Not having any righteousness of my own based on legalism, but having that righteousness which comes through the Messiah's faithfulness, the righteousness from God based on trust.
So all those things he just listed, his entire identity, his status, he throws it all away.
He reevaluates it completely. He sees that none of it, absolutely none of it, actually made him right with God.
Yeah.
His top spot in the religious system. Worthless, even a hindrance compared to just knowing Christ. It's such a powerful point. Our achievements, our status, our efforts, they just can't buy God's favor.
So thinking about us today, what's the takeaway? It really hits home, doesn't it? It makes you ask, are we, maybe without even realizing it, putting our confidence in, I don't know, going to church, doing good deeds, our family background?
Our religious qualifications.
Exactly. Instead of just resting completely on Christ alone for where we stand with God. It's like that idea of losing our religion, not faith, but losing the idea that our efforts contribute to our salvation. Because Paul shows pretty clearly that kind of religion, it just doesn't save.
Precisely. It's about what foundation you're really building on. And that flows right into his next point, verses 10-14. He shifts from the past to this ongoing journey, what we call sanctification, becoming more like Christ. He says, yes, I gave it all up in order to know him. That's the goal. That is, to know the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings as I am being conformed to his death, so that somehow I might arrive at being resurrected from the dead.
But he's clear he hasn't reached it yet, right? He says he hasn't obtained it or reached the goal.
Yeah.
So if it's not salvation he's chasing, what is it?
Great question. And you're spot on. This isn't about earning salvation. That's a free gift received through faith. This is about sanctification. That lifelong process of actually becoming more like Jesus, growing in holiness, being transformed. Paul wants to experience Christ fully, the power of his resurrection, working in him, sharing in the hard times, the sufferings, even being shaped by Christ's death, which means total surrender. It's active, it's ongoing, it's not a destination you just arrive at.
And he uses that image of a race, doesn't he? In verses 13 and 14, he says, one thing I do, forgetting what is behind me and straining forward toward what lies ahead, I keep pursuing the goal.
In order to win the prize offered by God's upward calling in the Messiah Yeshua. Yes, that forgetting what is behind part is really powerful.
What does that really mean, though, forgetting failures?
It definitely includes that, yeah, letting go of past sins, disappointments, discouragement. But it's probably broader, too. It could even mean letting go of past successes or things we think make us strong if they're holding us back now or making us complacent.
Interesting. So don't rest on your laurels either.
Kind of, yeah. If you're always looking back, good or bad, you can't effectively move forward. So Paul says, strain forward. It implies effort, focus, actively looking ahead, listening for the Spirit. It's not passive.
Okay, and then the prize, people often think that's heaven or salvation itself. But you're saying, and the source material suggests, it's something else.
Exactly. Based on Paul's context and other scriptures, like Jesus' parable of the talents in Matthew 25, this prize isn't salvation that's secure. It's about rewards for faithful service during this life.
Rewards? Like what?
Well, the sources point to three main things. First, hearing those words from Thane. Well done, good and faithful servant. For many, just that affirmation. Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, definitely.
Second, the idea of being put in charge of many things on the new earth. Real responsibility, real authority in God's coming kingdom based on faithfulness now. And third, maybe the most beautiful part, to share your master's happiness. And the insight here is that this means seeing the fruit of your life specifically, seeing the people you help bring to faith in Jesus, and sharing in the joy of welcoming them into eternity. It really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
It really does. Puts a whole different perspective on why we serve, why we live the Christian life. It's not just about getting in, but about faithfulness and the joy that comes from that, which kind of sets up the next section, Philippians 3.15-19, how we should live this out, and, importantly, who we hang out with. He talks to the mature in faith.
Right. He tells them to basically keep following his teaching, trust God to reveal truth to others who might not be there yet. But then he says, Imitate me and pay attention to those who live according to the pattern we have set for you.
So look for good examples. Follow them. Makes sense.
But then he contrasts this strongly. He talks about many who live as enemies of the Messiah's execution stake. He's clearly upset about them, says they are headed for destruction.
Yeah, and this is where the advice gets a bit surprising, maybe, compared to how we often think about evangelism today.
It is quite striking. He expresses deep sadness for these enemies, but the text doesn't say, go spend all your time with them to earn the right to share the gospel.
Right. That's often the advice you hear.
Instead, the implication seems to be, live out your faith authentically, share the gospel clearly when you have the chance, but then trust God to do the heart-changing work. Like Jesus' parable in Mark 4, you scatter the seed, God makes it grow.
So it's less about strategic relational evangelism, and more about clear proclamation and trusting God's power.
It leans that way, emphasizing God's sovereignty. Paul isn't suggesting believers should constantly immerse themselves in relationships or environments that pull them away from their faith. He draws a clear line.
And he describes those enemies pretty vividly. Their God is their belly. They live for physical appetites. Proud of what they ought to be ashamed of. Values totally upside down. Concerned with worldly things.
Yeah, it paints a picture of people completely focused on the temporary, the physical, the earthly, which stands in, well, stark contrast to where Paul wants the believer's focus to be.
Which is?
Heavenly. That's the big finale of the chapter, verses 20-21. A powerful reminder, but we are citizens of heaven.
Not citizens of earth, primarily.
Exactly. And it is from there that we expect a deliverer, the Lord Yeshua the Messiah. He will change the bodies we have in this humble state and make them like his glorious body, using the power which enables him to bring everything under his control.
Wow. That's quite the anchor.
It truly is. It tells us, look, this life, this world, its struggles, its values, this isn't our final home if we're in Christ. Our real citizenship is elsewhere.
And we're waiting for Jesus to return.
Eagerly waiting. And when he does, he won't just fix the world, he'll transform us. Our current humble, perishable bodies will become like his glorious resurrected body, which means, by the way, that our journey to being fully like Christ won't actually be complete until he returns.
That's a helpful clarification.
And the obvious implication is, don't get too comfortable conforming to this world's ways. Our destiny, our identity, our values are fundamentally different from those whose citizenship is only here, whose focus is stuck on temporary things. We're waiting for rescue, for transformation from a completely different realm.
So wrapping this all up, Paul's journey in Philippians 3, it really does give us a kind of roadmap, doesn't it?
It really does.
Starts with that radical rethink of what's truly valuable.
Yeah.
Chucking the resume, focusing on Christ, then understanding this ongoing process, sanctification, becoming more like him, and even how we should think about our relationships and our ultimate hope. It's all about this active, grace-fueled chase after Christ, not just ticking boxes.
And if you connect all those dots, Paul's message, it's not just old theology, is it? It's alive.
Yeah.
It's challenging us right now to look at our own qualifications, our own attachments, the things we lean on for our sense of worth. It makes you ask yourself, what advantages or credentials in your life, things that might even be good in themselves, could actually be, maybe subtly, holding you back from knowing Christ more deeply? That supreme value Paul talks about. And think about that idea of forgetting what is behind. Maybe it's not just about your failures. Maybe it's also about past successes or things you're good at that could actually become a barrier if you rely on them too much. So the question becomes, what are you really straining forward towards? And what's the prize that truly gets you out of bed in the morning, spiritually speaking?
Those are some powerful questions to sit with. Thank you for joining us at this deep dive into Philippians chapter 3. We really hope these insights spark your own further exploration into what it means to truly know Christ and follow him. Until next time.